So, if you've been getting my marketing emails about this masterclass, you might have seen the email where I talked about Jade's amazing branding for this course. She's the one who came up with the idea of this high fantasy motif. And I decided to name today's masterclass Conquer the Dragon because marketing feels like a terrible beast that we're very scared of, right? I saw that in all the comments. So I think that's very appropriate. So we are going to talk about how to launch your graphic novel without selling your soul when you feel absolutely terrified by the marketing beast. Okay, I want to start off by saying that the feeling that you have is totally normal. It is very, very, very rare. I'm thinking here if I have ever met an author or artist who was actually really enthusiastic and loved marketing. Maybe my client Misako Rocks, but she's the only one I can think of. And even her, sometimes it is a slog. But I want to talk about three reasons right off the bat why marketing feels particularly difficult and why your feelings are so normal. So, reason number one is that marketing is always changing. It's constantly in a state of flux, and you are expected to keep up with it. So, I just threw here a graphic that I found from online that is talking about what the corporate media economy used to be. In other words, how was media distributed to readers or viewers or whoever in the old days before the internet affected everything? And in those days, if you were a creative, if you were a writer, musician, actor, journalist, whatever, and you wanted to get your work to the end consumer, the reader, for example, you were working with an intermediary, which might be a publisher, or it might be a bookstore chain like Barnes and Noble, or it might be working with print media like the New York Times, or all these big, big, big companies. They were the ones who were standing between you and your end reader, and you had to go through them, and they were the ones who really carried most of the burden when it came to the marketing part. Now we are in a very, very different situation. We are in what is called the creator economy. So all those traditional intermediaries have way, way less market power than they used to. And the places that your end reader are going to find the material that they are interested in, whether that is a book or a movie or um, art or anything like that, is basically platforms. They are looking at Instagram, they're looking at YouTube, they might be joining a community in Discord or Reddit, or they're basically on one of these many, many, many types of platforms. And you're expected to know how to use all these platforms and pick which ones work for you in order to reach readers. And that's completely different than it used to be, and it's always changing, right? So, reason number two, I'm going to read this quote to you. There's a huge emotional component to being a creative person because you are putting yourself out there in such a big way. Naturally, you are going to come face to face with your psychological issues. So, reason number two is basically psychology, it's human mindset. It is honestly very scary to present yourself and your work, which usually comes from deep inside of you. It is something that's coming from your heart, and say, hey, everybody, take a look at what I care about, really, what I've spent the past 3 years. And maybe you're not going to react well. Oh, God, that's really scary. That is extremely, extremely scary. And then reason number three, I found this slide again on the internet. Top 19 essential marketing skills. And I'm not going to read all of these skills, but you can look at this. How does this list make you feel? Probably overwhelmed and not very excited, right? When I look at this list, it does not make me excited or happy. So, reason number three is basically a whole bunch of technical skills that you might not have, that you need to learn. You might not, you definitely don't need to learn all of this stuff, but you might need to learn a few of these things, and they might be very, very new to you. So, reason number one, the rate of change. Reason number two, human psychology. And reason number three, skills that you do not have. So, I'm going to zoom out now away from those scary things because they don't make me feel good either. And I'm going to talk to you in sort of a bigger picture way. So basically, a book launch is a specific type of marketing plan, right? And let's talk about what marketing is. And I'm going to talk about marketing in a very different way than what I was talking about before. Marketing your book is the act of connecting with your ideal reader. And it's the same as how humans connect with each other in any regard, right? How do you connect with other people, with your friends, with strangers? Hopefully, you connect with people by using empathy, curiosity, you want to know about them, and by using stories. Stories are the absolute most powerful way that humans connect with each other. And that has been the case since time immemorial. It's all about stories, right? So, can you be empathetic? You can say in the chat, do you feel like you can be empathetic? Can you be curious about other people? Can you tell stories? I sincerely hope that everybody who's on this Zoom is capable of telling stories because this is what you're here to do, right? So if you can do those three things, you have everything you need to do a great job promoting your book. So just set aside all that scary stuff that I talked about in the beginning, and I want you to focus and think about being empathetic, being curious, and telling stories. Okay, being empathetic means putting yourself in your reader's shoes and asking yourself this question. Is there a way that you can help them or brighten their day? Now, I would say that people who are marketing educational things or services have a little bit of an easier time because you can directly address a person's pain point and help them. And it's a little bit harder to do when you're basically selling fiction, which is entertainment, but you can definitely brighten people's day. Absolutely. There are creators that I follow because just opening up their newsletter makes me smile. I know for sure it's going to make me smile. So here is just one example. This is Mike Lowry, and this is just something I pulled from one of his emails. And he just puts in a comic, and he's talking about apps that are being called the Instagram alternative and how he feels when he sees all this advice about maybe going to Blue Sky or maybe going to Threads or blah 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 blah, all that stuff that was going on. And you can see the expression on his face. Do you feel this way sometimes? Probably you can relate, right? So Mike Lowry is talking about how he feels, but he's doing it in a way that he probably knows there's a lot of people reading his newsletter who feel the way that he feels. So he's connecting with you. All right. And then being curious means trying things, seeing what happens, and learning. So there's two ways that I think you can be curious in marketing. Or two ways that I would recommend that you think about it in a way to help you. So number one is trying things in terms of like, I'm going to try writing about this topic in my newsletter, and I'm going to see what kind of a response I get. Like if I ask a question at the end of my newsletter, are people going to respond to that question? And then you send the newsletter out and you see what happens. And maybe you get some responses, which means, hey, you might be onto something about that particular way of talking about things in your newsletter. Or maybe you get crickets and then you know you have a piece of information about maybe the topic isn't quite hitting the mark. So that's one way of being curious. Another way of being curious is finding out about your readers. So like for instance, going to a show like SPX just happened, and I was talking to Jade about being at SPX, and the response, and she was saying like some strangers bought her zine, and it is so cool to see a stranger picking up your zine and actually paying money to buy something, and they've never met you before. So that's a piece of information, right? It is actually hitting the mark with some people who want to be entertained. So that's another way that you can be curious. So here's an example from a newsletter. This is from Ashlyn Anstey, who has a newsletter called For the Fun of It. She is an artist and I think a comics creator, an illustrator, has an awesome newsletter that I highly recommend. But she put in one of her newsletters her failure of the week. I'm not sure if this is something she does all the time, but I really loved this. So she talks about something she tried with resin. I think she was making something and it just was a complete bomb. Uh, but she's not hiding it. She's saying, okay, I tried this and it was an epic fail. It is totally fine. And in fact, more than fine, I would say. People really relate when you're open about the things that don't go well because everybody has that in their life, right? Okay, and then telling stories. When you are putting any sort of communication out into the world about um, yourself or your book, any time that you can convey that information by telling a story, you will connect with people better. I want to show you an example of this. This is from a newsletter that Mika Song sent. She is doing or she was doing, actually, this might be today. She's at Brooklyn Public Library doing a Moomin drawing event. Now imagine if she had just sent her newsletter and she said, "Hey, subscriber, I am doing a Moomin drawing event at Brooklyn Public Library. Here are the details. Hope to see you there." How would that make you feel? You might be like, "Well, okay, if I'm in Brooklyn, maybe I would want to attend that event because I do love the Moomins." But if you read what she wrote, she said, "I'm going to be drawing Moomin trolls with families at the Brooklyn Public Library. I discovered Moomin Valley when I was in fourth grade. I found these old cloth-bound copies of the books on the shelves. The titles were strange, and I cracked them open and fell in love with the illustrations and the characters. No one else I knew had read these books. Was I the only person in the world who wanted to wake up to the smell of Moomin Mama's breakfast and stand in the garden looking at the mirror ball? Turns out not at all. So, as you can see, when you tell a story, it has a whole different resonance in how it comes across. So, please tell stories when you're putting stuff out into the world about your book. Okay, we are now going to get into some nuts and bolts about planning your book launch. You always want to start from a solid foundation. And the solid foundation is number one, know thyself. And number two, know thy audience. Okay, this right here is a super cool handout that Jade designed, and you can download it. You don't have to download it right now, but if you go to that link, kids.comicsunite.com/launch-bonus, you can access this. We are also going to be emailing you after this masterclass with the link so you can download this sheet. But I'm going to be going through some of the elements on this with you right now. So if you have a pencil and paper or a pen and paper, get that out, and we're going to be going through some things. So let's start very simple. I would like you to write down on your paper your name, what type of a creator you are, and you can describe yourself however you want. So you might say graphic novelist, cartoonist, author, um, writer for middle grade, whatever it is that however you like to describe yourself. And where do you live? You've already put that in the chat. And who is your target audience? Try to be specific here. Tell me the grade level, the type of book they like to read or the genre, um, if there's a personal trait, if they're a reluctant reader, perhaps, whatever it is you want to write about your target audience. I'm going to give you just a minute to jot this down on your piece of paper. Okay. Now we're going to dig a little bit deeper. All right. Got you still have your paper. What is a quick list of your top likes and dislikes? And this could be anything in the world, literally anything. But I just want you to put down three things from just whatever jumps into your head. Three things you really, really love. Three things that really drive you crazy. Okay. Now I want you to write down a quick, like just bullet words, uh, maybe three words. How would your friends describe you? What are three adjectives that your friends would use to describe you? Okay, another quick list. What are your most important creative tools? And when I use the word creative tool, I mean, I want you to define that however you want for yourself. So maybe your creative tool is your iPad, or maybe your creative tool is your cup of coffee in the morning, or maybe your creative tool is the soundtrack that you listen to. Whatever it is that you feel like, I absolutely need these three things to get in the groove and do my creative work to the best of my ability. Okay, one more little list. What inspires you? And this could be some books that inspire you. It could be a place you go that makes you feel full of life. It could be a person. It could be music. Whatever it is, what are a handful of things that just really, really, really inspire you? Okay, now we're going to talk about your book. Okay, and if I know I have people at a wide range of stages with your book production. So some people, it might still be something that's at a very, very early stage and you don't know when it's going to be published. Others might have already published a book and you're way far along, or you have a pub date that's coming up really soon. So it doesn't matter, but just think about whatever the current project that you're focusing on is. So I want you to tell me the title, or I want you to write this down. What is the title or the working title? Who is it for? And when do you think it will be launched? If it is something that's still at a very early stage, maybe just use your best guess. Like, I think it might be ready in 3 years or something like that. Okay. And then I want you to use a few bullet lists to tell me the words or phrases that describe this book or this comic or whatever it is. What's the vibe that you feel like you get readers are going to get from reading it? Okay. And now I want you to describe your story in one sentence. Write it down. Your one sentence. This is otherwise known as your log line, which I know can be a pain in the butt. So just do your best. Write it down as fast as you can. What comes into your mind? How are we doing on the, I know this one is a really tricky one, but I'm gonna keep going, but you can always come back to this. Okay. Fans of which other books or comics would like this project that you're working on right now, your book or your comic or your graphic novel? Tell me a few other books. These are otherwise known as your comp titles. So maybe at least two, maybe three other comp titles. Write those down. Okay. And this is, I actually, maybe this is not the last question. I think this is the second to last question. What are some top reasons why people might want to buy or read your book or comic? So, in terms of reasons, it might be the subject matter, or it might be the the feeling that they get, or it might be the style in which it's told. Like whatever comes into your mind as being the absolute most important reasons. Okay. And the last question is, where can people get updates from you about this book or comic? Now, for some of you, it might be there isn't a place where they can get updates. And if that's the case, that's the whole reason I am doing this masterclass, right? Because I want to make sure that there is a way that people can get updates from you. So it might be your Instagram, or it might be your newsletter. It might be that you go to shows and you meet people in person. Um, it could be whatever way that you are putting out into the world a way for people to learn about what it is that you're doing. So this should be really fast, like either, my newsletter, my Instagram, YouTube, my podcast. If you're really advanced, I don't know if anybody in here has a podcast, but there might be some. Okay. So all that information that you just wrote down, all of that is informing what you're going to do to launch your book. And I want you to ask yourself right now, is it possible for people, all that information that you just wrote down, is it easily found? Can it be found online right now? Like if somebody looked at your website, would they find most of that information? Or if somebody looked at your social media account, would they quickly get a sense of at least some of those things? If the answer is no, then you need to work on that. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so when it comes to book marketing, there are only three buckets of basic areas of focus that you need to know about. One of them is content. The second one is community. And the third one is connections. And I'm going to explain what each of these things are. So, content is the information and communications that you put out into the world about your book. And here's a few examples. Content might be your website, it might be the Amazon page about your book, It might be a YouTube channel. It might be a Kickstarter page. It might be a press kit with further information, and it might be social media accounts. It could even be a postcard that you give away at a show. All of those different things are different forms of content that you're putting out so that people can find out about your book. Community is the group of people that you gather who love what you do and support you. And I am going to recommend that an email newsletter is one of the best ways to do this. There are other ways to do it, but email newsletters are really awesome. So here's a slide with different examples. So one might be going to a book festival and talking to people. Another one might be doing a school visit and connecting with the teacher as well. Maybe they join your mailing list. Um, or going to a conference, like the far lower left image is Katie Reiser at ALA. Um, or it could be your newsletter, or in social media or on Patreon, the comments section, like with people responding to what you post and your reply to them, that is also an example of building community. So um, the best way to get a sense that what you're doing in terms of online marketing is working is when you actually get comments or replies to whatever it is you're doing. That is sort of the gold standard, and I want you to be aiming towards getting that. And of course, it takes time to kind of figure out what you do that actually does end up hitting the mark with people and getting them to reply to you. And then the final bucket, connections. Connections are other people who have their own audience. So it's not your audience, they have an audience. So these are the bigwigs or the influencers who can spread the word about you and your work to their audiences. And some of examples of this might be review journals like Kirkus, or it might be a list or an award that educators or librarians look to find books. Or it might be a book blogger or Instagrammer like Imagination Soup here. Or it might be like Kids Comics Unite. Sometimes we do interviews and post on YouTube about creators. There are many outlets like this, and basically, when you get featured in either a review or in an interview or on a social media post or whatever, all the people who follow that whatever publication or person are going to find out about you. And so I know this sounds like a lot, and it definitely is. So when you're just getting started, I want you to only bite off what you can chew. So focus on one thing at a time in each bucket. So if you're really just beginning um, with content, like for example, you don't have a website yet, that is the absolute foundation you should get started with, is just building a website. Don't worry about social media. Don't worry about all that other stuff. Just get the foundation there first. And then slowly you can move on and add something new to what it is you're doing. So I want to just mention about myself. I am not the greatest social media person. I don't really like social media. With Kids Comics Unite, we had some sort of fits and starts with our social media account, and we kind of gave it up for a little while, and we didn't do it at all. But hey, we have people here, right? So we are connecting with people. So you don't have to be on social media in order to get the word out about whatever it is that you're doing. So here's some examples under each of those buckets of what I consider part of that focus area. So with content, I mentioned your website. Another example would be a sell sheet or a PDF about your book, your media kit, your Kickstarter page if you're going the crowdfunding route, a blog, which would be a little bit more advanced, or like super advanced, podcast, YouTube, and then of course social media. Community would be somewhere where you're connecting one-on-one with people and you're kind of like getting them to know you personally. So your newsletter, appearing at cons or festivals, reaching out one-on-one to people to support you through a pre-order campaign or an online review campaign, doing school visits, connecting directly with teachers and with students, doing speaking engagements, that kind of thing. And then connections would be reaching out to other creators to get blurbs or sending your book to review journals to be reviewed, being interviewed, submitting your book for awards, appearing on a panel at conferences, things like that. Okay, so, so hold on. I'm moving some Zoom stuff around. Now I want to talk to you about how the content and the community and the connections all work together and in a cycle. And the concept behind this is called flywheel marketing. It's very, very popular right now. I wonder how many of you are already familiar. If you're familiar with the term, um, write in the chat like, yes, I've heard of flywheel marketing, or no, I've never heard of it. So the original meaning of a flywheel is what I wrote here, a heavy rotating wheel or disc that stores kinetic energy. And this is something, the concept of a flywheel has been around since ancient times. It is something where it's very hard to get started with a flywheel. It takes a lot of effort to move it in the beginning. But as it starts moving, it starts getting easier and easier and easier. And once it's like really rolling, it becomes very easy and it's very, very, very effective. Like a steam engine, that is a flywheel. Okay. So with what you're doing with your marketing, that is essentially the process you're going through. And it is very hard in the beginning. So don't feel like there's something wrong with you if in the beginning it is a total struggle, because that's just the way it is. It is not going to be easy. So here's how the whole thing works. So in the beginning, you are making things and you are putting them out into the world to connect with your target audience. It might be the book page on your website. It might be you're going to a show and you made a postcard to give to people. It might be a social media post where you show some aspect of your creative process. Then you're going to do some outreach to influencers who might be interested in showcasing your work. And what they are going to do when you reach out to them is they are going to look at your website or they look at your social media page and they get a sense for who you are. And if you have been putting some stuff out there, they are going to find it and hopefully feel like, oh, this is legitimate. I'm actually interested in what they're doing. And maybe they will say yes to you and they will feature you in some way. So that might be a review, or it might be an interview, or a mention of some sort. And then their audience is going to read whatever it is that whatever they put out, the review, the interview, the mention. And some portion of their audience, hopefully, might click through and find out more about you. And then some little tiny portion, it's always going to be very, very tiny in the beginning, might actually subscribe, meaning they might subscribe to your newsletter or they might follow you on social media, something like that, where they actually come into your orbit and are connected with you. And as you get more connections with people, you start to get to know your target audience a little bit better, which means that as you make things, you get a little bit better at whatever it is that your newsletter writing or your social media posts, or how you show your work when you are in a school visit or at a show. And so you level up, and then when you make things, you get better, which means that when you show your work again to more influencers or bigwigs, they're a little more impressed. So there's like a slightly higher likelihood that they might feature you. And you can see how this whole cycle does get easier as you go around the cycle, but you have to keep going around, and it never ends, I'm afraid. But that's just the process that you have to go through if you're building a career as an author illustrator. So again, when you're getting started, focus on the fundamentals. Don't jump into the really complicated flywheel stuff, but focus on the fundamentals first, and then you can start doing the other stuff. So if I was going to sum up, what are the absolute fundamentals update your website or have a website, start a mailing list, even if you're not sending out newsletters yet, just set up an account and put that sign up on your website, because that way, if somebody does come to your website and they do want to hear from you, that is so gold. You don't want to lose those people. So you really, please, please, please have a mailing list on your website. And then third, when you're ready, do one type of outreach. Okay. So once you've started to, you've gotten all those fundamentals going, then you can add new things to your plate. I would say, from what I have observed, many people either try to do way too much and it is exhausting and they get burned out, or they feel totally overwhelmed and they do too little. And both of those things are very, very problematic. So, what you want to try to do is follow the Goldilocks rule, not too much and not too little, so that as much as possible, you can be consistent. Being consistent is probably one of the most important principles for marketing. And it is very, very, very hard. I struggle with being consistent. I try to send a newsletter for KCU once a week, and I send a newsletter to my agency once a month. And sometimes it's like once every 10 days for the KCU, and sometimes it's once every 6 weeks for my agency. So I don't always hit the mark, but I am trying my best and I'm slowly getting better. I've gotten a lot better. I mean, a few years ago, I wasn't really sending a newsletter at all. So you can do it. You can do it. You just have to give yourself some grace. Now, be forewarned, because this whole process, everything I'm describing, requires you to get uncomfortable. Of course, because of everything I've talked about how all those reasons we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. It is definitely going to make you feel uncomfortable. So I sort of already talked about it, but basically it's because you're learning a new skill, you don't know what you're doing, you're making yourself vulnerable, and so you're going to feel awkward and you're going to question things and feel like, I'm not doing this right. Why am I doing this to myself? I wish I didn't have to do this. But here's the thing, if you're here and you want to have a career as an author illustrator, making a career as a creative is freaking hard. It is incredibly difficult. It is not like getting a job at an office or something like that. Not at all. Basically, you are a startup. You're starting a business, a creative business. And that is really, really, really hard. So, creating your work is a process where you're playing with ideas, you're working hard on mastering your craft, which is something you want to learn, you're expressing yourself in a creative way. And does that sound fun? For most people here, myself included, that kind of thing is what makes me really excited. I want to go in there. And, even writing newsletters, I have to admit, has become a lot more fun for me. Like, because there is a lot of creativity in what I do when I write newsletters. Promoting your work requires you to get vulnerable in public, face rejection, and deal with your insecurities. Does that sound fun? No, no, no. So I'm just repeating this in many, many different ways so I can get through to you that I know it sucks, but you have to do it if you're very serious about making a career in the arts. But there is a tried and true way to handle all of these challenging, difficult, uncomfortable feelings. Baby steps. Everything starts with baby steps. So going back to what I said about the Goldilocks rule and how people often try to do way too much or they freeze and don't do anything, baby steps are the answer. Just set small goals for yourself in the beginning and take small actions consistently and do this over and over and over again. Oftentimes, we think to ourselves that if only I was more self confident, like maybe you think of me as being really self confident. If only I was like Jana, I would be able to do this a lot better. Well, the truth is actually the opposite. If you take action, you slowly start to gain self-confidence. So just setting yourself a very small goal that you feel like actually is accomplishable and then doing it, it gives you this little boost and makes you feel like, oh, okay, I did it. Maybe I can try something a little bit bigger next time or a little bit harder. So, this is why I recommend, I'm going to explain this a little bit, that you move from your outcome goal to process goals as quickly as possible. Let me explain what I mean by this. An outcome goal is what you want to happen ultimately. And obviously, with everybody here, you want to sell your book, right? A process goal is the actions that you take to make your outcome goal come true. So, an example would be I will sell 3,000 copies of my book within the first year of release. This is a very clear um, outcome goal. But a process goal example would be I'm going to send my newsletter once every 2 weeks. I'm going to reach out to 5 schools every month to inquire about setting up an author visit. I will message 2 bloggers or podcasters or educators that I admire every week to ask if I can send them a copy of my book. What I want you to notice is that do you have control over this outcome goal? You do not. We don't have control over outcome goals, but we do have control over process goals. You personally have control over whether you actually send that newsletter once every 2 weeks or whether you actually send those emails out to 5 schools or message those influencers, right? So you have control, and that's what can help you reach your outcome goal. So set an outcome goal and then put it aside as soon as you can. Identify the process goals that are going to help you get to that outcome. So I'm going to try to pull things together to make it a little bit easier for you. I created a bare bones book launch checklist. This is just a 2-page document that has like kind of like minimum tasks that I would say you should do to launch a book successfully. I tried to make it as doable as possible if you're more or less a beginner. So again, it's on that same link, kidscomicsunite.com launch dash bonus, and I will email you after this whole masterclass is done. You can, I'm putting the link in the email, so you'll have access to that. Okay, so let's review. We're coming to the end here. So, number one, you are not weird for thinking that marketing is hard. It is difficult for numerous good reasons. Number two, get clear on what you enjoy and can handle, given, what's going on in your life and what your audience cares about. And when you communicate about your book, find that overlap between you and your target audience. And that takes trial and error. You have to keep doing it in order to start getting better at it. And number three, be empathetic. Put yourself in the shoes of your target audience. Be curious, try things, see what happens, and learn. And always, always, always tell stories when you're promoting your book. Number four, use content, community, and connections. Figure out what you're going to focus on in each of those buckets and do one thing at a time to slowly build out your book launch plan. And then identify your outcome goal, set it aside, identify the process goals that are going to help you get to that outcome goal, and focus all of your attention on your process goals. Okay, so this is where I'm going to tell you about the course that we are launching. If you want to dive deeper and you want to go through this in a structured way with me. So if you go to our website, let me see if this works now. Okay. Can you guys see the screen with how to launch your graphic novel? Okay. We have changed the page now. You should be able to purchase the course if you're interested in it. I'm going to go through now and explain what it is. So basically, it is a 6-week bootcamp plus bonus week. So it's 7 weeks in total. And if you scroll down, I have the syllabus here. So we are going to be talking about the big picture. We will be working on your website together, working on a lead magnet. We will be working on the content that works for you, talking about copywriting. We will be talking about building your community, how to start growing your mailing list, how to do a review push, what is a street team. These are somewhat more advanced topics, but I'll be explaining it to you and we'll decide together like what is right for you. We'll talk about how to encourage pre-orders, how to set up live events, how to do school visits. We'll talk about how to think like a publicist, putting together your media kit, how to pitch in terms of getting exposure for your work, what are blurbs, which are pull quotes from other creators talking about how awesome your book is, my number one recommended promo activity, and how to get in front of influential educators. We'll talk about putting it all together into a plan. In the last week, we'll put together your whole marketing plan. And by the end, you're going to have your launch plan. You will definitely have a website or landing page with mailing list sign up and a few other ancillary items we're going to put together so you are all ready to go to launch your book or your comic. So if you are interested in that, I think, I forgot. Before I get to the price, I know you're all wondering what the price is, but I want to talk about guest speakers. I'm very excited. We have 4 guest speakers for this course. The first one is Elise Benin, who is the founder of a site called marketingmentor.com, which is a resource for creative professionals. And guess what? Elise is actually my business coach. And this is the first time I'm gonna be having a public conversation with my own business coach with you guys. So that's going to be really, really cool. Then Sam Cusack is the senior lead for Kickstarter. This is an event that we're doing in collaboration with Patrick Lugo's crowdfunding lab. And we'll be talking about how crowdfunding, if you want to go entirely the crowdfunding route, or also we'll talk about how to use crowdfunding in connection with also working with a traditional publisher. Then I'm going to be talking to Melissa Taylor, who is the founder of Imagination Soup, which is one of the most well-known children's book review sites. And we'll be talking about author visits and also about working with influencers and how to connect effectively with them. And then finally, Lynette Kim is the Senior Manager of School and Library Marketing and Children's Publicity for Chronicle Books. And we're going to be talking to her about specifically the school and library market and also how to work effectively if you're working with a traditional publisher and you want to make sure that you're working well with their marketing and publicity team. So if you're interested in this, the cost is $900 for this course. But we are offering an early bird discount if you sign up today. So you have until midnight tonight. We are giving you a $100 discount if you use the code early bird, all one word. When you click the link, purchase course, there's going to be like a place where you can put in early bird, and that gives you the discount on the price. Okay, I also wanted to show you. Okay, if you go inside Kids Comics Unite, I'm not, yeah, okay, good. I want to show you inside the course a little bit. So if you click purchase, you're going to be brought inside the course inside of our Kids Comics Unite community. And there is this overview page, which shows you what you can expect. We also have live lessons. Actually, I should probably go to the calendar and Zoom link to explain a little more about this. So we're going to have a live lesson every Tuesday at 1 p.m., but it is recorded. So if you cannot join at 1 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, don't worry because you're going to get the lesson within 24 hours after I teach it. And then we have the guest speakers, of course, listed in here, and then office hours. Office hours are going to happen on the Monday after I teach the lesson. And sometimes I'm going to be doing them at 7 p.m. Eastern and sometimes at 1 p.m. Eastern because I know people have different schedules and can attend at different times. And during these office hours, you'll have the opportunity to show work that you've done the assignments that I'm going to be giving in each lesson, and I will give you feedback on it. And you also will be able to ask open-ended questions. Like if you just have a question related to something that we talked about and it's not specific feedback, I will go through those as well. So as you can see, this is the whole calendar of what we're doing. And it goes through November 20th is our celebration day where we're going to all come together and celebrate what we've done during the course. The syllabus is right here. It's basically kind of what I showed in the calendar, all the details, and that's where I'm going to be putting the handouts and the homework. And then in the course feed is where we're going to be, chatting as we go through the course. And if you go to members, you'll be able to meet other people who are in the course. And one other thing that I didn't mention yet about the course is that actually, if I go to the overview, I think it's on here. I'm going to be curating small groups, peer groups, or masterminds, however you want to think of it. So when you join the course, you will get a survey that you'll fill out for me, and then I will put you together with a very small group, like 3 or 4 other creators, and you'll be able to meet once a week and kind of support each other, brainstorm together, give each other feedback in addition to the feedback that I'm giving you. Because again, I know that you might not be able to come to all the office hours. And so having that small peer group of fellow creators is another way for you to get feedback on what you're doing. I think that is everything I wanted to talk about with the masterclass. So, oops, wait a minute. I need to get back to my. Oh, okay. Yeah, I already said that. Let me see if I can go to view. All right, I'm sorry. I can't figure out how to get back to the full screen. So you're gonna bear with me. But I did get a few questions for Q&A when I sent out the email. And I know that some of you here probably have questions and you might have put questions in the chat. Bailey has been paying attention to that. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through, I think maybe I should go back and forth between questions that I got over email and questions that you guys have here right now. Um, so let me start with one of the questions that I got over email. So I sent you guys an email, and if you were on my marketing list for this course, asking if you have one thing that you want to make sure that I cover in the course today. And Leo sent me this question, which is not one question, but I'm actually going to sum it up, okay? Uh, so Leo asked, I'm curious to know how book tours work. Does the publisher organize or fund any of the tour? Who arranges locations, times, cities? I understand creators are responsible for a great deal of promotion, but how much does the publisher typically do? Blah, 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 blah. Leo, you asked a lot of questions here, but I think basically you're asking one really good question with all of these questions, which is what is my responsibility and what is my publisher's responsibility? And that is a really great question. And so I did, this list is a little bit scary here, and I'm going to sum it up for you again. But I made a list here on the left of what your publisher is going to do for you, and on the right, what you can do or what you're expected to do to support your book launch. I don't want to read through this whole bullet list here. You guys can look at it and see. But I'm going to sum it up on the next slide, which is your publisher is focusing on sell in, which is like they're talking to the retailer accounts. They're selling your book to libraries. They're selling your book to Barnes and Noble. They're selling it to Amazon. They're selling it to independent bookstores. That is called sell in. You are responsible for sell out, which is, or it's also called sell through, which is getting people to go into the bookstores and buy the book, getting people to go into libraries and request the book, getting people to go online and purchase it on Amazon or bookshop.org. That's your main responsibility. Okay, I am going to stop share for a moment because guessing that there might be some questions. Bailey, did we get any questions?
Oh, we have a bunch.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I apologize, guys. I did not keep track of the names of who asked what question. I've just been copy and pasting them into a little doc.
Okay.
Um, so the first question I have is target audience as in the children or the parents buying the book. So I just wanted clarification.
Okay. That is a really tricky one. Yes. You have two target audiences because you're creating for children or teens. Your end user is kids or teens, but your target audience when it comes to promotion is pretty much usually adults because they are the ones who are actually buying your book. And I would say for most kidlit people, focusing on librarians and teachers gives you your biggest bang for your buck because they're the ones who influence the parents. So I would say 80% of kidlit promotional activity is pretty much focused on that audience.
All right. Another question we have is this is literally copy and paste. This is probably a dumb question, but as a creative, can I put this class as a tax deduction or business related expense? Which I
Yes,
think is a fantastic question.
yeah, you actually can. Yeah, well, I mean, as long as, okay, I think, okay, first of all, I should say, I am not an accountant, so do not take take my advice with a grain of salt. But I believe the IRS has some sort of rubric for how they determine whether your creative activity is a business or a hobby. And if it's a business, I think you have to probably show some form of income that you are getting. Even if you're ultimately losing money, you are getting revenue in some way, I believe. You should research this. But if you are in some way getting some form of income from your creative activities, then you can expense this as a business expense. I also would recommend that you have a business account for your creative work.
Next question we have is if you already have an agent and want to go the traditional route, would this course be as beneficial? That's their first question.
Yes, definitely. I think this course is it's yes, 100%. Part of the reason why I'm teaching this course is because I am an agent and I work with, I have clients, authors, and illustrators, and I wanted to kind of force myself to put things together in a really structured way to help them and help whoever else wants to learn from this material.
And then their follow-up question was, if you work full-time but can't make the course hours because of Pacific Standard Time, will this still work? And how many hours a week should we expect to do to get the most out of the course? Like to invest in
Okay.
the course.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely fine if you can't attend the lessons, 100%, because we're sending the replay, you're going to hear everything, and you can watch it at your own time. In terms of the office hours, you probably won't be able to attend all of them, but I would sincerely hope that you can attend at least one of them, because I am trying to vary the times a little bit. Um, and also, that's part of the reason why I created the peer groups or why I am going to be curating these groups for you so that you definitely have the chance to interact with other people who can be, bouncing ideas around with you and keeping you accountable. Um, and I deliberately keep these groups pretty small. So I think there'll probably be between 3 and 4 people, probably not more than 4 people. And part of the reason, well, I keep them pretty small for two reasons. Number one, because I think that allows you to develop better relationships and really help each other better. And then number two, because it makes it easier, a little bit easier to schedule so that hopefully you can find a time that works for all three of you or all four of you to meet on a regular basis during the course.
Uh, someone said I'm trying to figure out exactly what they said in the question, but they basically said that I'm getting all as a marketing tool, is email kind of dead, yes or no? Is basically what this question's gotta say.
Okay, I have an answer for that. We got 280 people to come to this master class, And our main form of marketing was email. So I would say it is effective. It's not dead.
Next question is the course worth it if your book is not finished yet? I feel like we did go over this, but if you want to like talk about that a little bit more, Jana.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's, your call. I personally wish that all creators would think about marketing at as early of a stage as possible because it's a big lift and there's a lot to plan. And even if you're not actually doing all the work now, just like understanding the different components and what you're going to need to do so that you can make a plan when the time is right, I think is a really smart thing. So if you're very serious about your career, I think it's wise to invest time to learn about this stuff. Whether you take it through this course or you buy a book, which is obviously, a much cheaper way, but whatever it is that is right for you, I really recommend it.
Another question we have is would this course be appropriate for people who have an adult audience instead of kids audience?
All the principles, frankly, they apply no matter what you're focusing on. The examples that I'm going to be using in the class are all from kids and teen books. So all the examples are going to be from that world. And then the one aspect of what I will focus on heavily during the week when we talk about um, community and connections, school visits. That's not really that applicable for adult books. Although if your book was the kind of thing where you could do speaking engagements at universities, for example, um, that's definitely an avenue for adult publishing.
Our next question was, all that said, is it still worth your time to speak to small bookshops and librarians? Now, I answered this in the chat for you, Janet, already said yes.
Yes, yes. Actually, this kind of relates to one of the questions I got over email, which I do want to go back to my presentation and answer the rest of those questions. But it seems like we got a lot of questions here, so I'll try to answer those first. But um, bookstore appearances are a bit tricky because I have heard many, many stories of people setting up book signings in bookstores and then nobody came, which is a terrible feeling for you as the creator. It's like it hits really hard and you don't want to be in that situation. So, if you're going to be doing bookstore appearances, just keep in mind that you need to do a lot of the promotion work to get people in the store to come to your book signing or your event.
Another question we have is, I just thought this was a very interesting one. I see a lot of people sharing work in progress online, but how do you protect yourself against your work being stolen?
Um, that's a tricky one to answer. You can't completely protect yourself from your work being stolen. There's many things you can do to mitigate it, like, only posting low res art, and sometimes using watermarks. Um, but okay, let me back up a little bit. It's possible that somebody might be asking about getting your idea stolen, which is also something that I see people worrying about. Personally, I don't really worry about it that much because making a book or a graphic novel is such hard work that the idea is not, it's the same thing in the world of startups. People always say a good business idea is a dime a dozen, but actually building a company is freaking hard. So, so I don't really worry that much. And I think the actually, Austin Kleon talks about this in, I think, Show Your Work, one of his books. By the way, if you haven't read Austin Kleon's books, can somebody type in the chat Austin Kleon? Because he's such a great, he writes so many great books about all these issues with marketing for creatives. Um, but he talks about how your biggest concern as a creator is not getting your work stolen, it's nobody knowing who you are. So it's much more important to put yourself out there and getting people to find out about you than to worry about um, your idea getting stolen.
Okay, I'm gonna do two more questions, Jana, and then we can get back to the ones that you already had
Okay.
planned. And they're specifically about the course themselves, which
Mhm.
is this course going to be available to take in the future? I don't know if that means if we plan on running it again. And then also, will the people in the course be grouped by audience and genre or just by location?
Okay. Will it be offered again? I hope so.
We
But
hope so.
we hope so. Yes, we hope so. We sincerely hope so. Things always happen. So I can't 100% predict because I think I said at the beginning of this year, or maybe it was the end of last year, that we were going to offer Kids Comics Intensive this fall, which we didn't end up doing because of various scheduling stuff. Um, so I cannot guarantee, but I we do hope that we're going to offer it again. Okay. And what was the second question, Bailey?
The people who take the course, are they going to be grouped
Oh,
together
right. How
by
I'm
genre
grouping.
and age or just by location?
I am not grouping by location. I've actually, this is another example of learning by making mistakes because I have done these courses now. Um, I've taught online courses for almost 5 years now, and I learned that it's better to group people by sort of copaceticness, like that I feel like they would get each other. I feel like they're interested in similar things. I feel like their audience is kind of similar, or they would understand each other. That's way more important than they're in the same time zone. So I don't pay attention to location. I pay attention to like how much I feel like you would relate to each other.
All right. I That's what I got currently. So if you want to keep
Okay.
going, Jana,
All
go right
right. Yeah,
ahead.
let me quickly go because I did get some really good questions. But let me, okay. I don't understand how to get back into my view in, but I'm not going to worry about tech issues right now. I'm just going to deal with what I have. Okay. So this was a really interesting question. Can graphic novel book launches actually be financially viable? Okay. This really like it kind of weighed on me, this question. Most authors do not make a living from their books until they have a substantial backlist and have built up a fan base. So your first book that you launch is not going to make you a living. And getting an advance from a publisher is not like a salary. It is an investment. Think of a publisher like a venture capitalist. They're giving you a little investment, they're throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what happens. And if it does pretty well, they might invest in you again. But they're waiting to see what happens, and the lion's share of um, the success is going to rest on your shoulders. So here is a hypothetical scenario. Let's say you are a graphic novelist and you get a $15,000 advance. Now, that doesn't look like very much money, but that is sometimes what people get. So it's considering that a graphic novel might take you more than a year, maybe 2 years to do, $15,000 obviously is not a salary, not even close. Now, let's say your book comes out and it sells about 4,000 copies in the first year, which is kind of reasonable for a traditionally published debut book. Publishers are hoping that you will sell a lot more than that, but there are plenty of books that sell around that amount, and there are plenty of books that come out from a traditional publisher and sell less than 4,000 copies. Now, let's say the price for your book is $14.99 and your royalty rate is 7% of list price. That means that after that first year and you've sold those 4,000 copies, your royalty earnings are $4,197.20, which means you are in the red $10,800. So you need to keep selling your books until you're going to start getting royalties. Now, in the red doesn't mean you have to pay back the publisher because when you get an advance from the publisher, they're not, it's sometimes people say an advance is like a loan. It's kind of like in between a loan and a grant um, because you are paying it back through the royalties, but you don't have to pay back the money if you don't earn out. I hope all of this makes sense. But I'm basically showing you this here to show how hard it is to make money in this business. So it's really usually only until you've been publishing multiple books and you've really built up an audience that you can actually start making a living from publishing books. Next question was, can you turn a comic strip into a graphic novel? For example, if you have illustrations set out in panel form and a story to go with it, could it become a book if it had potential? This question is really more of like a pitching question than a book launch question, but my answer is yes. And this is an example of a book like this. Andrews McMeel is a publisher that does many books like this that are basically taking comic strips and turning them into books. And they do this for kids as well, like the Big Nate series. Also, Webtoons, webcomics platform, they are publishing books that are basically compilations of webcomics. So, yes, it happens all the time. All right. Next question. What is the average window of commitment towards a launch tour? I feel it's important to plan ahead. So this question, I wasn't 100% sure what I wasn't sure if I understood it correctly. Because window of commitment, I wasn't sure if you meant like how long does it take to plan it or how long do you set aside to do a launch tour. And also, like launch tour, I wasn't sure whether you meant like a tour to bookstores, which is sort of the old definition of a book tour, or if you were thinking something differently. So I want to just, first of all, summarize different types of launch events. So a launch event might be a launch party. Angela Shea, who I think might still be here, did an awesome launch party for her book at a comic shop. School and library visits could be a type of launch event. A bookstore signing is a different type of launch event. Tabling at a con or festival can be a launch event, and presenting at conferences. These are all different ways that you can set up events to promote your book. Now, the thing about them is they do need to be planned significantly in advance. I would say up to a year in advance, especially with things like conferences or festivals, cons. You often need to apply way in advance in order to make that happen. Your publisher might help you with some events that are centered around your release date if you're working with a traditional publisher. They are very laser focused on that pub date. So they might help you with setting up a couple events, in the 1 month right after your book comes out. But they are quickly moving on because your publisher has hundreds of books that they are dealing with and hundreds of authors, and they cannot be thinking about your book that just in terms of bandwidth. They just don't have the bandwidth. Um, but you, on the other hand, can continue setting up these events potentially forever. So you should continue doing events to promote your book way beyond the actual release of the book. All right, what promotion advice do you have for people launching a book in the US but who live outside of the United States? So I would say that many, but not all, of what I showed on previous slides can be done from outside. So you can't obviously go physically be at a festival or um, go to a school and do a school visit, but you could do a virtual interview, for example. You could do a school visit on Zoom. That's actually becoming quite common. It became pretty common because of COVID. Um, and then all the other things like on social media or outreach to influencers, um, having a website, paying attention to your metadata, like and making sure your Amazon page is all the bells and you're using all the bells and whistles as much as you can. All of those things you can do from outside of the United States. And I show this example all the time because this book impresses me so much, and I think it is an excellent example. This book is published by somebody who lives in Germany, and I don't think he's ever come to the United States to promote this book. And also, it's self-published. It's not from a traditional publisher. It is amazing. Look at how many how many customer reviews. 5,239. Um, that's way more than most traditionally published children's books. So what did this author do to promote his book? He, I know I actually spoke to him once because I was so impressed. I reached out to him over email and asked if I could talk to him, and he said yes. So, the first thing he did, well, I should say he lived in the United States for grad school. So for 2 years of his life, he lived, I think, in Massachusetts, did grad school, and then moved back to Germany. And so he had some connections in the US. He had some friends that he met there, colleagues, whatever, people that he was still somewhat in touch with. He reached out to all those people whose contact information he still had, told them that he was coming out with a book, said, like, if you have a kid who might like this book, please let me send you a review copy. And he shared it with them. So that, and asked them if they would leave a review if they liked it. So that is kind of what got him that initial set of online reviews. And then the other thing he does is, oh shoot, I'm not connected to Amazon right now, but you can go look up this book. If you look at the Amazon page, he did an amazing job of describing the book, using lots of keywords and key phrases in the description, using Amazon A plus content, which is like videos and images to show the book. He submitted it for lots of reviews. So there's like review pull quotes on the page. So he did everything he could to make this page look really great. And then the third thing he did is he did invest in advertising. So I I am not an expert on Amazon ads. If you want to go down the advertising route, I highly recommend that you do a lot of research because it is possible to lose a lot of money by spending advertising. It's tough. But if you can make it work, it can work really well, especially for self-published people, because when you are self-publishing, you're earning more per copy than you are if you're working with a traditional publisher. Your royalty rate with a traditional publisher is a lot, you're going to get much smaller amount of money per copy sold than you will if you are self-publishing. So as a self-publisher, you have a little more room to spend on advertising. Okay, next question. How can we use a book launch to also build our long-term author brand, not just promote one title? I loved this question. Such a good question. So I want to, again, zoom back a bit and ask, what is a brand? I would say a brand is all of the feelings and sort of senses and emotions that we associate with something. So, for example, Dave Pilkey, Captain Underpants, Dogman. What do you think when I say his name or mention those books? You probably, like, a lot of adjectives come into your head because it is a brand. You recognize it, right? So your brand is just what people feel about you, and you can't really, again, it's sort of like what I mentioned before with outcome versus process. You can't necessarily control your brand, but you can control your branding, which is what you put out into the world. So the way to build a brand, I would say, is being consistent and building habits so that people are seeing those touch points coming from you on a regular basis, which kind of gives them a better feeling for who you are. And then using every book launch that you do to build out your ecosystem. So, for instance, activity sheets like downloads or handouts, or even a lead magnet, which is a freebie that you can give to encourage people to sign up for your email list. You can continue to grow those assets with each book launch. Also, talks that you do, you can maybe you have a blog post that sort of summarizes each of the talks that you do, or you have a school visits page, and as you develop a new talk to go with each new book, you can add that to your school visits page. Testimonials, those are things that you add as you go along. So your website, your social media, um, it gets built out and it gets more and more robust as time goes on. And then the final thing I would say is, and this is a really, really key point, treat all outreach that you do as relationship building, not as a one-off promo. So if you reach out to somebody because of your first book and they do a nice write-up about your book, first of all, you definitely want to thank them. You want to email them and be very grateful. Let them know you saw it and how you really appreciate it. But also, don't stop being in touch with them completely. Like, pay attention to what it is they're doing. And maybe every now and then you leave a comment on their Instagram account, or they send a newsletter and they say something that you really love and you reply to them. So you kind of stay in touch. Maybe you even become friends with them. And then you're building that relationship so that then down the road, when your next book comes along, it's not like you're just only showing up to say, "Hey, can you promote my book?" You actually have already become you've built that relationship. All right. This is my last question, and this is a super funny one. This is from Bob. Can we do a shout out to Patrick, Ryan, and myself about our self pubs on Kickstarter? So Bob Tebow asked me this question, and I want to actually give him props for being pretty bold and asking me to promote his Kickstarter in my masterclass. And I wanted to just point out that this is an example of just asking, you know, why not? You never know. Why not send an email to that influencer that you like and just see what happens? Maybe they're not going to help you, but maybe they will. So I am going to show you guys. Bob Tebow has a Kickstarter coming up. Patrick Lugo has a Kickstarter coming up, and Ryan Claytor has a Kickstarter coming up, and they are doing activities in Crowdfunding Lab inside of Kids Comics Unite, so you can find out more. If you want to check out their Kickstarters, I definitely recommend, if you're thinking about doing Kickstarter, that you support other Kickstarters first. So you kind of see how they work, you build that goodwill, you show that you give before you ask. So I think that that's a great idea. I also want to point out one other thing about this. So Patrick and Ryan have done multiple Kickstarters in the past. I believe this is Bob's first ever Kickstarter. If you look at the URLs, Bob is using the Kickstarter URL, which is kind of long and kind of hard to type in. Just don't worry about it. Go into Kickstarter. If you want to search Luna Lily, and I'm sure you will find Bob's Kickstarter. That's the easy way to do it. But Patrick and Ryan have created custom URLs. And those URLs, if you type those in, it's really easy. It's going to lead you straight to their Kickstarter page. And the reason I'm mentioning this is to just emphasize what I talked about in my presentation, which is you always start as a beginner and you get better as you go. So when you're first starting out, you, like Bob, you just use the Kickstarter URL, right? You might not be advanced enough to set up a custom URL and then link to your Kickstarter. But once you've done it a couple times, you've ironed out some kinks, you have a little more bandwidth in your head to do some of the more slightly advanced things like what Patrick and Ryan are doing here. So this is just an example of what I talked about in my presentation. Okay, I think that is the end. Um, Bailey, did we have any more questions?
I don't think so. But if anyone has any leftover stuff, like any last minute questions, definitely send them in the chat.
Okay, I'm scrolling through and looking at all these
Oh,
comments,
there's
but
one.
okay.
Can a writer take this course?
A writer, yeah, yeah, absolutely, definitely. These are principles that work for, yeah, I'm happy I can say that because, with Pitch Fest, we ended up having to change things so it is only author illustrators for our Pitch Fest event, but definitely this course applies to either authors or illustrators. Let's see, it's 12:30. Wow, okay. I wasn't sure how long this presentation would take. I really didn't know. And it
Oh,
was
I
important.
have two more questions.
Okay.
One of them is, are there any resources besides this course that you could possibly look for to identify influencers and librarians? That is one of them. And then the other one is, if you had to decide, Jana, would you go the self-publishing or traditional route and why?
Ooh,
I know
wow.
for me, I'd consider it conditional.
Wow, wow. Okay, okay. Let me take the first question. Yes, comp titles are your friend. So I know agents and editors talk about comp titles all the time, and it might make you roll your eyes. But They're very, very useful for multiple reasons, and they can be used for publicity research. So, um, when you're doing research to find influencers, think about those books that attract or that would appeal to the same readers that would really love your book, and then go to Google and search the title of that book or the author's name and review or interview or podcast, or just use those words, and then look through the results and see, who reviewed their book, who did a podcast episode about their book, who did a YouTube about it, who posted about it on Instagram, and then have a spreadsheet and just put all of those names. And also, you can do the same thing for award lists, or library recommended titles, things like that. Yeah, and then put all of that in your spreadsheet. And it's a lot of work, very painstaking, time-consuming work. But that's why I suggest, when I talked about outreach, I said, like, just set aside one block of time, maybe once a week, half an hour, and you just pick away at it. Just however many people you could email in half an hour, send your template email to, customize your template, of course. You have your template and then you customize it for them. Um, and then just keep that going and then get through your spreadsheet. So that's how I would do that. Okay, that was the first question. Second question, Bailey?
I'm muted. Um,
Oh,
it was that, in your opinion, would you choose traditionally publishing over
oh,
self-publishing for a book?
oh, yeah. Well, that's such a hard question. I mean, the huge advantage of traditional publishing is in advance. Obviously, you get paid in advance. But you don't have control over whether you get a deal with a traditional publisher. So you can try, but if it doesn't work out, then there is self-publishing there for you. Um, so yeah, I think part of the reason I talk a lot about self-publishing is because I do think it's viable. I think you do have to take an entrepreneurial approach. You have to realize that you're not just a creator, you also are the business person thinking about it. Roger McMullen, in our community, I think is one of the best examples of somebody who does self-publishing in a really thoughtful, um, intentional way, and I think we can all learn from Roger. He did a webinar with us where he kind of uh, talked through all the marketing he did for his book Cicada Apocalypse and talked about what worked and what didn't work. So maybe if we after this is over, I can try to find that YouTube and then post a reminder about it in the feed so you can find that because that was really good.
Someone's asking when the replay will be available, but that is a question for me. That will be latest. I will have it ready probably by Sunday night. I'm hoping to get it out like today. So this replay will be out super, super soon.
All right. So I always ask at the end of my Zoom meetings that we unmute ourselves and say goodbye to each other. I really appreciate you guys being here. I hope it was useful to you. Please go download those handouts. And yeah, let's all go and enjoy the rest of our weekend. Thank you, everybody.
You.
Thanks,
Thank
guys. Thanks for
you.
Thank you.
coming.